All right, the clock's ringing 0, so I think it's time for us to begin. Let's go ahead and have a word of prayer. God, we thank you that we have the ability to communicate and talk to one another. And we thank you that sometimes when conflict arises, that we have the ability to think about the best ways to solve those conflicts and how we can do so without hurting feelings and without making people upset. We pray that you'll help us as we talk today about just basic communication and conflict resolution, how we apply that to our marriages and our families. We pray that you'll help us as we study. Through Jesus we pray. Amen. All right, so I thought I would start out by stirring the pot a little bit. I don't know if stirring the pot is the right way of saying this. So I'm going to give you an example of a time when I totally failed in the communication process. All right? It's been a while ago, just one. I'm just giving one. No. I did yesterday too, but a long time ago, before 2 of our kids were born, I was traveling some, and Shelly and I were going to plan a trip. And I put her on the task of getting a hotel room. And if you recall Priceline used to be the only way you could get a room on Priceline was when you bid for it. It didn't have the bid and book a room. It just had bid. And so when you did this, you had to give them your email address and you had to give them your credit card information and tell them how much you were willing to pay for that hotel room that particular night. And it really wasn't a particular hotel room. Generally, it was more of a 4-star, 3-star, 5-star deals. You were really flying blind here. But we got several nice, decent hotels doing it that way. So Shelly goes and fills everything out, and I asked her, I said, what email address did you use? And she used an email address that was no longer checkable. So I panic. I mean, if we've given her our credit card information and they are able to get that hotel room for us, then they're going to charge our credit card, and we'll never know what hotel it was or how to get the information. And so I looked at her and I said, that's why you shouldn't do things like this. It gets the same response every single time. There's no good way around. You can't sugarcoat that. You can't say that was okay. I mean, it was just bad on my part to do that. So later on that evening, we're lying in bed, and we haven't talked much since then. We were in the same room. I don't think we've ever slept apart because we were angry. Maybe. I don't know. I can't think of one. We were lying there, and I said, I'm sorry. I know what I said was unthoughtful, that it was rude, and I shouldn't have said it, and I'm sorry. And she was like, well, how did you know that bothered me? I'm thinking, all right, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to know you're upset about this, but I didn't say that. I just said, I knew it was wrong, but I knew it bothered you, so I wanted to apologize, let you know I was sorry that I said that. So there's a couple lessons to learn from that, hopefully. One is, you have to be careful what you say, because even I didn't yell or scream, it was sharp. It was said in a derogatory, condescending type tone, and it was just wrong. And who's never said something they shouldn't have said the way they shouldn't have said it? John. John has never said anything wrong. Okay. And I think we all fit in that category, right? We've all said things we shouldn't say. And it's unfortunate sometimes we say the most unloving things and the most disrespectful things to the people that we love and respect. And so we have to try not to do that. But we're all going to make mistakes. So does anybody else want to step out there and give us an example of a time in there? Now, it's very important that you pick a wound that is totally healed. If this was yesterday and you're still fighting about it, probably don't want to share it with the rest of the group. But if there's something that you can think of that you'd like to share with us so that we can learn from this. All right, Jason has one.
Mom's actually here, so I apologize, Mom, telling the story. But I hurt Mom's feelings once. They had gone on a trip, and I've hurt my mom's feelings more times than I care to count, but one that just has always stuck with me, I have little snapshots in my head of embarrassing moments, things that I regret that still make me cringe. She came back from vacation and brought me this nice little sculpture, and I did not like it and think she should have gotten me something else, and I made no bones about it, and I just hurt her feelings. Someone did something nice for me, and somehow I managed to make her feel bad about that. And I don't know, Mom, what's it been, 30 years since then?
Have you apologized to her, or is this the apology?
Oh, no,
Is
no.
this the first apology we're hearing about this?
I've apologized, and if you want to know if it's healed, Mom can't even remember when it was. But I actually still have the sculpture. It's a fish. It was a copper fish thing you guys brought back from one of your world travels. But just the very concept that somehow I could make somebody feel bad for giving me a gift was humiliating. I'm kind of humiliated and embarrassed to share this with you guys from that perspective, that what a horrible little human being I was in my mid-20s.
Oh, that was in your mid-20s? I thought you were like 6.
No, this was a grown-up stupidity, and
Well, I think she's forgiven you.
but it also taught me a lot about not being an idiot.
Good lessons to learn. All right, Terry has one and Mike has one. We got all kinds of them going up here. Only the men are sharing. I guess only the men say dumb things. Terry, you go first. You got the microphone first.
I got two quick ones. So Veronica came home from Winter Park Hospital with our firstborn, and then after that was her first Mother's Day. And so Mother's Day came, and she didn't get a present. And so she was mad at me and crying. She says, "Why didn't you get me a Mother's Day present?" And I said, "Because you're not my mother." And so she said, "That's what I said. But I'm the mother of your firstborn. It's not like he can go to the store and get it." And I go, "Oh, okay, you know." And then the second time, she was walking through the kitchen, going in the garage, carrying a load of clothes or something. And she said something to me, and I said something real snarky back to her. And I remember her going into the garage and setting the clothes down. And she came back into the kitchen, and she put her hands on her hips. And she says, "Excuse me?" And I remember laughing really hard because she looked just like a chicken. and so I would say snarky things to her after to try to get her to repeat it, and she eventually caught on.
Survived. Mike.
Whenever we go on vacation, my attitude is just throw things in the car and take off. But Anne, the wife, has to plan. She has to pack for the kids. She has to shop for the food. When we get to the place and the beach trips, all the women would cook. A lot of that's changed now. But a lot of that was on her shoulders, and it's like, this isn't a vacation for me, you know. And I would think, it's not a big deal.
She said that? She said it's not a vacation for her?
Yeah.
Oh.
It was not a vacation.
It wasn't.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Sometimes what we say comes out of, sometimes it comes out of just meanness, let's face it, or just being human. Sometimes it comes out of cluelessness. You're not reading a situation very well, or you just don't put yourself in someone else's shoes to see how they are and how they're feeling. All right, anybody else? Got enough wounds opened up? All right, Veronica has one. I don't know if it's about Terry or not. Okay.
There was one time that Terry's a really good gift giver, except for the first Mother's Day. And there was one time he got me a food processor for Christmas because he felt bad at Thanksgiving. I cut these rutabagas, and it's like cutting wood. So he thought he was doing me a favor by getting the food processor. And I opened it up, and I tried to act excited, and I said, and then there was nothing else after that for me. And I said, "This is my Christmas gift." And I made him feel so bad, and I felt bad afterwards, but.
All right, so communication is difficult, and in the marriages, we're going to say things that we regret and things that we wish we hadn't said, and there's going to be some hurt feelings. So what have we learned already, just from what we've talked about, as far as practical advice on how to get along in the way that we communicate in marriage. Anything? Matt has something. Microphone.
A lot of times it's emotions,
Okay.
or frustrated, or, like your situation. That's a frustrating situation. I've done the same thing when I'm frustrated and it's like, well, that was not helpful at all. And now it's not only a frustrating situation, well, it's a double frustrating situation. So a lot of times it's emotions.
Yeah.
So take a deep breath, slow down, whatever it is. Yeah, that's a big thing.
Yeah, and one of the passages that we read here in section A, under section 1, letter A, there is the passage there in James. And the blanks, we'll just go through those real quick. Be swift to hear, all right? So we got to be quick to listen to other people. And then number 2 there, be slow to, and then number 3, slow to. All right, so I think all of these examples seem to be examples where we didn't take a time to think before we talked. It was just in the spur of the moment, an emotion or something hit us in that moment, and we just blurted something out. And because we blurted it out, we had to, face the consequences of that. So I think that's one thing that just these silly examples, and in hindsight, we can all these, but it does illustrate the point that most of those happened because we just didn't take a deep breath and take a pause. We just had something in our mind, and we wanted to say it. And we said it. We didn't have that restraint capacity. The other thing that it reminds us of is once we do say something that we shouldn't say, we should not be so stubborn that we can't go back and apologize pretty quickly. And so we need to apologize. Everybody here will need to apologize for something that they said to their spouse and their children. Because you will be hateful to your children at some point, probably, if you haven't already. They will frustrate you to the point where you might even yell. Why are you yelling? Because you didn't listen the first 45 times I said it, right? And you have that situation where you're trying, but a lot of it happens because we speak before we pause. We need to apologize. We need to be open to apologize. And then I think the other thing that we've learned from all of these things is that the golden rule, that if we have constantly, tried our best to live the golden rule, and we've been putting deposits in the love bank, the emotional love bank of our spouse or our children, of one another, and then when we say something bad, say something out of character, it's not going to wreck the marriage. And you can usually get over some of those things. But if it's a constant thing, and this is your character, this is the way you treat people, you are hateful, you are not respectful when you talk to your spouse, you are not loving when you talk to your spouse, you're short with people, if that becomes the way you communicate on a regular basis, then your emotional love bank with that person is going to be easy to overdraft, right? So if you have it built up, and these everyday things that happen on occasion, you're not going to have to pay a $35 overdraft fee. You're going to have enough in there to weather that particular thing. And what we have to be careful of in our life and our marriages is that our bank accounts are constantly full. And if they're not, that's when marriage problems are going to really be amplified. The small things are going to be amplified 1,000 times because there's not a good basis there for that. All right, so let's talk about this. There was a question here in this James 1 passage, I think it's labeled question number 1. It says, which of these three, swift to hear, slow to speak, or slow to wrath, is the hardest for you personally? Well, obviously not being quick to speak. As no one is saying anything. All right, Phil did the auction thing. He acted like he wanted to say something, so I'm calling him out. Anybody else? Which of those is hard for you?
They're all hard for me. Really, depends on who I'm talking to.
Okay.
As you know, women like to speak about 20,000 words a day. and men like to speak about 10,000 words a day. So the trouble with my wife and I is when I get home, I've already spoken my 10,000. I'm done. And she's just getting warmed up.
All right.
So when she asks me, honey, how was your day? I say, it's okay. It's fine. But what I didn't understand was she wants details. Even the smallest details that you and I wouldn't care about. It was a good day. If it was a bad one, I'd let you know. But they want to hear that. That's one of the love languages that a wife wants. They feel closer to you the more you talk to them and the more you give them details about your day. They're interested in what's going on because you're not with them. So I think that's important, but that's probably the hardest one for me.
Yeah, so I think we probably all of us struggle with all three of these things. Phil's comment goes to a question we'll talk about a little bit later, just challenges in your marriage sometimes. We talked about this. Men and women are different, and the way they communicate is different. You know, one thing is women tend to go all over the place, and you can't even follow where they're going because they're, it's spaghetti. It's what men are like waffles, women are like spaghetti. And so their train of thought, it's hard to follow. Men like to compartmentalize. Let's talk about this, then we'll talk about this hole in the waffle, and then we'll talk about this part, So and like I said, also, we have to remember this. Not all men are exactly alike, not all women are exactly alike. So I said that at the beginning, right? Men and women are different, but men and men are different, and women are different. But that is a huge one. It happened in our marriage, and I saw these two pointing at each other. How many of you women have ever been in an experience where your husband just didn't talk and you wanted them to talk? They just shut down and you said, I have some questions. I want to talk. I want to have a discussion. All right? Not everybody, but a few of you are that way. Shelley raised her hand. Yeah, for sure. Especially when you have when the moms are staying home and the only interaction they have all day long is either with a television playing in the background to occupy the kids or talking to 3, 4, and 5-year-olds all day. I mean, that's hard, right? I mean, they just talk nonsense all day long. And I heard somebody say, you can't pay attention to every single thing your kids say when they're that young, you just go nuts. It's just, and that was a man saying, it's just like all kinds of craziness. My mind can't focus on this. But she's been doing that all day very well, better than you can do it typically. And then when she gets home, she wants some adult conversation with the person she married. And as Phil pointed out, sometimes we as men don't want to talk. We're just talked out for the day. And so there's got to be some. All right, let me ask this before we go on. Does somebody have a microphone? Nobody has a microphone. Do you have a microphone, John, or did they take it away from you? All right. What's a solution to that problem? All right, Matt has one. How do we solve that issue?
So that is definitely something for me. By the time I get home, I'm pretty overstimulated, overpeopled. I'm dealing with lots of different humans all day. And at the beginning, it was a little tougher, but we've learned. If I take some time, I get a shower, I kind of chill in the room for a little bit, some downtime first, then I can give the time. But at the beginning, I was wanting, I need a minute, I need space. And why? And I didn't understand, and she didn't understand, and it felt like
she's been dealing with kids all day.
Yeah,
and she needs you to help, and you want to. It's
like you need a break now,
yeah.
and But actually, if I take that short break first, then I actually have more in my tank to give to the family after.
Yeah.
Which might sound,
But that's something you work out over time.
But figured out, yeah.
I can be a lot
give
more
me
engaged.
That few minutes.
Just give me a few minutes and sit down. Phil drives a lot, so he might have to take that time in the car to sort of decompress, get ready. One thing issue that we have sometimes is I'll mention something, like something I saw on Facebook or something. I see it on news. Let's say I see something on the news, a blurb. And I have a tendency not to read the whole article. Maybe just the headline and maybe the first couple paragraphs. And I'll say something to her, and she has like 1,000 questions. I wish I hadn't said anything now. More questions that I didn't go that deep in it. Sorry, it wasn't, like Bill said, sometimes they want the details. I don't care about the details, really. I just wanted the overall picture. And so we've had that issue. Somebody has one up here. All right, Savannah?
Steven's usually very, very good about listening to me, but when he's burnt out, he's done. So I have to find other people to torture. So my favorite is other moms because they had the same problem. They want to talk to an adult, and I want to talk to an adult. So I get together with the other moms, and we let our kids go crazy, and then we have our talk time. And then when husband get home, I'm like, hey, hi.
All right. All right. So you found get other people to talk to, so that if Steven's burnt, you're not missing out on adult conversation. All right. That's a good one. Dave.
Yeah, I'm not really big on small talk. And for me, most things are small talk, close conversations. But an example was, I told Brenda, I'm going to call Tom, my brother-in-law, Holiday, and we're going to get together tomorrow and go for a bike ride. And she goes, okay. So, I go off, make the call, come back, maybe 15 seconds later. And she goes, I thought you were going to call Tom. I said, I did. I thought you're making arrangements for tomorrow. We did. You did all that in 15 seconds? And I go, yeah, how much time do we need? And Tom would have answered the same way. And so the lesson was, my wife is not my brother-in-law, which should be obvious, but the expectation is different.
Sure.
And so the conversation has to be different. And I have to be mentally prepared for that, or aware of it, and conscious of it, and not just assume that she will be content with the same amount of words I use with Tom.
Yeah, very good. A couple of things. Both of you said something that's on my answer here. My answer was, with me, it varies on situation and what the relationship is. So whether I'm quick to hear, slow to speak, slow to wrath, it depends on who it is and what the situation is. And sometimes I find myself wanting to, you have to be careful who you do this with, talk things through out loud. Just talk through things, and you're not really, and you might say something or you have an idea that probably isn't a good idea. But sometimes with some people, you just got to have it thought out beforehand. You can't just go and talk to that person on the fly. It depends on the relationship you have with them. And then sometimes I just don't talk enough. Like Phil was saying, there's just times when your wife needs some conversation, and you have to, engage in that conversation, even if you're burnt out at that particular moment. You got to figure out a strategy to deal with that, whether it's the ride home or take a few minutes off or whatever the case may be. All right. Anything else on this section about being quick to hear, slow to speak, slow to wrath, and how that is played out in your relationship with your spouse? All right, Debbie?
Sometimes I'm not good about listening because the story takes forever to be told. And, any conversation, like I'm already 10 feet ahead of you and you're just, that kind of stuff. I think that's hard to listen to when somebody's going on and on about something.
Yeah. When I did my workshop, that was one of the things we talked about. We talked about things like that. What do you do if you have somebody in your office that just wants to tell you every single detail of everything? Let's say the engineer comes into your office and wants to tell you how the car is built from beginning to end, and you just wanted to know what gas mileage you got, right? And it wants to explain how you got that gas mileage. And that's hard to do. So have you had, I don't want to put you on the spot, how have you figured out a solution to that? Okay. Yeah. It is hard. We're also different. Some people are, just spit it out. Tell me the bottom line. I just want to know this overview. I don't need to know how many steps you took to get to the next part of the story. Just tell me you got there. But we have to learn to sometimes adjust, be patient. But other times there might be a time where you can tell someone in a kind way, I'm done listening to you. That's not the way to say it. What? No, you couldn't say that. It's very interesting. And then maybe say, what happened a few steps later? That's what I'm interested in hearing.
I think that it just helps when you know the person that you're talking to, like your spouse. I mean, obviously there's a difference between just knowing them and knowing their quirks and what they like. And, when it comes to Ryan and I have the tendency to, the phrase beat a dead horse? I like to murder that horse, and And I can tell when I'm doing that, like Ryan's eyes just kind of glaze over and he's like, we've solved this issue. Why are you still, and of course he's usually very patient and kind. And so that's something that I know about myself and that he doesn't, and I'm not at all practiced and perfect, but there have been times where I have been more self-aware and I'll say, like, I know that we've already discussed this, but I'm still anxious. So can I just,
Yeah, I think being self-aware is and being aware of how you're sitting with other experiences this conversation instead of just thinking, golden rule, right? So, from this perspective, Carrie Ann looks at Ryan, and Ryan has glazed over eyes, and he's talked about this long enough, and she's still talking. She has to, if she notices that, then she can either step out of the conversation and say, all right, I can see that you've talked about this long enough for now. I'm not done talking about it because I want to talk about it a little bit more, but I'm willing to wait for a little while and talk about it at another time. Something like that. I think being self-aware and being spouse-aware are both very, very important parts. All right, no, I don't. Did I say something?
No.
All right.
It's going to be redundant because I agree with Debbie. So.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead. You have to say it now.
And this is the first marriage lesson we've had where Connor's not sitting next to me, so now I can talk.
All right.
But I'm sure he's listening in. So this is for you, honey.
Cut the feed.
In the past few years, have realized through trial and error that he loves to give context. And that lasts 45 minutes at night, usually at 10:15 p.m. after the children have finally gone to bed, sort of. So he'll be like, let me tell you this thing that's going on that I've been watching or something like that. And I'm like, okay, great. 45 minutes later, okay, what was that about? But then my eyes will glaze over half the time, and then I'll be like, okay, so you're saying this. And he's like, no, that's not what I said. And I was like, oh, no, I got caught. I didn't listen well enough. So my problem is still not listening very well, but that's because I'm impatient because I just want to know the point. And so sometimes it's like, you just spent 45 minutes talking to me about this, and this is the point. That could have been dealt with in like 3 seconds. But it was really important for him to talk about the context, and there was a point to it. So, I've had to talk to him about that, and he's had to tell me, hey, what's the point of talking to you if you're not going to listen? I was like, well, that's really true too. So we both know that about each other, and we've had a really deep, hard conversation about how we're going to handle that, and we just have to balance 45-minute contextual conversations and having them sometimes and sometimes not having them, I guess.
And I think it would, Connor, I hope you cut that feed. I'm just joking, but that is being able to read the situation and give the overview might be a skill he needs to learn as well, because there might be people at work that are also like, all right, let's get to it here. I only want the overview here. And so that's something that we all can learn from, right? We can learn at home lessons that help us at work as we relate with different people.
But I love, I feel like, it's taught me, I'm giving, he and I both, I'm giving to him by, listening to the story, and then he's giving to me by, coming to me with the way that maybe I've wanted him to communicate with me. So it's just taken a while to discuss how we want to communicate with each other rather than just getting upset because somebody didn't listen the right way or something. So it took some psychological, deep diving to figure out why those things were happening. So it's been nice to figure that out over time.
Yeah, and that's what happens. If we start out, remember the first principle, we all have to believe that our spouse is a genuinely good person that has our best interest at heart, unless they've proven otherwise over time. I mean, I'm not saying that doesn't happen, but if we go into it with that attitude, we're going to be a lot better off. So a possibility is, he could ask you, do you want the 5-minute version or the 45-minute version? And you can have that conversation if this is something that keeps coming up in a relationship. It's just, okay, I'm not ready for the 45-minute version, but I could take the 10-minute version and I can pay attention for 10 minutes.
But then I'll also beat a dead horse for a really long time, kind of like how Carrie Ann said that. So I'm totally at fault too in a completely different way.
We all have our issues on how we communicate. But the thing is, if our heart is right in that, and our spouse knows that, then it's going to be something that isn't as painful as if they know he just doesn't care. If it ever comes, she just doesn't care about what I have to say, or he doesn't care about my feelings about this, then you have a deeper issue. So we have to make sure that that doesn't happen. All right, so point number B there, letter B. Speak gently, not harshly. Proverbs 15:1 says a soft answer turns away wrath, but a harsh answer stirs it up. So here's one key point here. Tone of voice matters. Can you communicate something with a tone of voice and the words say something totally different? We all can do that, and we all do it on purpose, and sometimes we do it on accident. Sometimes we do. This is the thing. Nonverbal communication is way harder to control even than verbal communication. You can't. It's almost automatic, and so if you have the glazed eyes, that's going to come out quickly. If you are short in the way that you talk about something, even let me hear it. You can say, I'm giving you permission to talk, but you can say it in a way that that's not how people want to do that. So very few people in this world can have mastered their tongue, right? The Bible says that. And then mastering all your communication, nonverbal, sometimes is even more difficult. Because sometimes people just sound grumpy and look grumpy. I didn't mean to look at you when I said that, Terry. That's just the way we are, right? That's just the way some people are. They're not upset. They're not angry. That's just the way some people's personality are.
Doing work for customer service with what I do or have done in the past, one of the tricks that they taught the support agents on the phone was whenever you're talking with a customer on the phone is to smile, because it changes the way your voice comes across, which goes to that point of the tone of voice. Yeah. So if you smile when you're saying something and having a conversation, it's much more palatable than if you have that aggressive tone, or you're trying to beat somebody into, this is why you need to be doing this.
So that's a good point, that sometimes our facial expressions can then have an impact on how the words sound, because it's hard to say hateful things when you're smiling, right? Unless you're just really good at that. All right, so let's go ahead and there's a couple other proverbs here. Proverbs 15:4, a wholesome tongue is a tree of life, but perversiveness is in it breaks the spirit. Proverbs 16:21, the wise in heart will be called prudent, and sweetness of lips increases learning. Proverbs 25:15, a soft tongue breaks a bone. Gentle words can overcome a hard heart, a resistant heart. And we see that oftentimes in our lives, whether it's us having the hard heart and somebody gently talk to us and we learn lessons from that and our heart softened, or the other way around. Letter C there, speak truth in love. So we put away lying, be angry and do not sin. Let no corrupt word proceed out of your mouth. No name calling unless it's, I do think whatever pet name you have for your spouse, I think those are helpful. It's hard to be mean to somebody that you're calling sweetie or sweetheart, right? So I think those can be helpful ways of keeping our mind. Who am I talking to? I'm talking to my sweetheart. And so that's going to affect the way that I talk to her in that situation. I think those are good. But somebody pointed out the other day, you never want to call any kind of belittling names. You don't want to raise your voice. We probably have all been in that situation where we've talked louder than we wanted to, whether it's out of anger, or some of us are just more animated than others. So some of us are louder in our conversations, even if we're not angry. And so we have to be able to figure that one out with one another. So that's an important part of our marriage. This idea, do not let the sun go down on your anger. Don't have bitterness of heart when you're talking. Because there can be are there times where you have to have challenging conversations that you don't want to have? Absolutely. How you go into that and the mindset you go into that is going to make a huge difference of the outcome. All right, so I think there's discussion question number 2 here. Ephesians 4:26 says, do not let the sun go down on your wrath. How do you balance that command to resolve conflict quickly with the need to sometimes cool down before discussing an issue? What's worked for you in your marriage on that one? You have two sort of conflicting things, Somebody needs some time to process, but you want to get it solved quickly. Matt?
Yeah, I'm the one who wants it resolved. I struggle with allowing Amy to have space. Sometimes she needs space to either, be mad at me, and probably justified, but I want it fixed right now. But that doesn't work for her. And so my need to pester and kind of keep, and I want to keep going on about it, talk about it because it's unresolved, that actually shuts her down more. And it took us a long time to learn this. And so talking about that when you're not having a hard conversation is really hard, but super important. Okay, when I know that you want that resolved, this is Amy talking to me, but when you do that, when you're kind of like, won't let me process, that actually shuts me down more. I need you to know that, because I know that you want it resolved, but I want to let you know that that's how that affects me. And you have to do that at some other time. Having a conversation about your conversation is really, but that's back to the self-aware and the spouse-aware, and it takes a long time to get there.
Yeah, when you realize this is a constant issue, right? This is something that, this is you, this is me, we have this, and it's always happening in the moment, right? I want to solve it right now, and you don't want to solve it right now. It's probably better to talk about that at a different time when there's no conflict at all happening. Just say, we've had some occasions in our marriage so far that I want to solve a problem real quickly. You prefer to have some time. And it seems like we haven't found a good solution to that. Let's talk about that while we don't have anything involved. So I think that's a good point.
And the other piece is, while I think the principle is good, if there's genuine wrath to find, you may not solve the whole issue, but to at least get, look, we're not getting anywhere with this conversation. Our feelings are hurt. Let's remember, we do love each other. We're going to go to bed. We'll deal with this tomorrow at the minimum. But for us, we have learned there's a lot of conversations that you should not have into the evening. Like once it's past like 9 o'clock, 9:30, like, nope, that's not a nighttime topic, because it does not go well. You're both tired and stressed, and it's bad. So we have learned there's a lot of topics that's a no-go zone.
I think a lot of people have experienced that the timing sometimes is as important as anything else. If you're having a conversation and you are tired from work, and it becomes a challenge. So what did you learn about David and Abigail, the way Abigail communicated with David? What stands out to you about that? Herb has something.
I think it was beautiful the way she reasoned with him and appealed to his integrity and his compassion. And I think she calmed him down, it seems like.
Yeah, for sure.
And so I think it was really just amazing to reread that story in preparation for these lessons, to see how calm she was and how strong she was, and saying, think about this, slow down, think about it, don't go off all, half-cocked and get upset. I thought it was beautiful.
It was the whole thing was just incredibly planned out by her. From what she did, what she brought, what she said, how she said it, the position of respect that she took by bowing down right at the very beginning. So all of that led into a unified message. And another thing is that she spoke somehow perfectly for David's personality and David's heart, David's character. I don't know how she knew that, but she knew what would appeal to David and what would be the best way to say it, and she said it almost perfectly. All right, what about Abraham and Sarah discussing Ishmael? Herb is the only one that read all of these.
Well, I wasn't sure what she did wrong. What she did right was she sent them away, Hagar and her son away, because Isaac was going to be the right heir, and even God said that. He said, he told Abraham, do what she says. I know, was there something here specific in this context that she did wrong?
No.
Because you've got right or wrong, so I didn't know.
Yeah. So there's some things that she did wrong in other occasions, right? When she was mad at him for going into Hagar and was blaming everything on him. How could you do this? And he says, it was your idea. You told. Not that he should have done it. I'm not saying it justifying what he did, but that was not necessarily a great way to do it. Yeah. So there's a whole, and I mean later you're going to have Rebecca basically be mad at Isaac for her not being able to have kids, and he's like, "What are you talking about? This isn't my fault." Emery?
So there's a point of being impassive that's bad. Adam and Eve. Adam was good. He told his wife, "You don't eat from this tree." She remembered that and said, Satan, I don't eat from this tree, or we don't eat from that tree. But he convinced her, but Adam was there, as it says, because he was with her. He didn't do anything about it to enforce it.
Yeah.
Abraham and Sarah, same idea. Abraham, if it's really, why are you sending her away just because, is it jealousy? Well, that's not a good reason. He had responsibility, which is another point, that the man should have responsibility for his family. He shouldn't be impassive, and he needs to take responsibility and be courageous about things.
Yeah, and David's another example of that, being passive and not dealing with situations as they arose. So that's a good point that we need to remember. Sometimes do you talk too much? Yes. Sometimes do you not talk enough? And are there situations, hard conversations that we have to have even though we don't want to? And David did not want to have those conversations sometimes with his family. Lesson 5 is back in the back for Sunday, and I've emailed Lesson 5 out to you already. I'm going to try to start remembering to add the dates, so you know. There is a syllabus too, though, so that's a way to back.